Welcome to Episode 8, the Circularity for Building Green 2022, the digital conference. Building Green is a flagship campaign for PHILGBC events and consists of year-round activities that encourage participation in the green building advocacy. I am Rowena Elida from the PHILGBC National Secretariat, and I will be today's facilitator. Thank you to the PHILGBC Board of Trustees for initiating this event. BOT Chair, Mr. Edgar Sabidong, Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer, Arthalan Corporation. Vice Chair, Ms. Rowena Ramos, Principal, Ecotectonica Inc. Secretary, Ms. Elizabeth Mendoza, Managing Director, Monofit Construction Philippines. Treasurer, Mr. Raymond Rufino, CEO, Neo Property Management Inc. And the members of the board, Ms. Catherine Ilagan, President and COO, PhilInvest Alabang Incorporated, Mr. Felino Palafox Jr., Principal, Palafox Associates, Mr. Henry Liwanag, Junior Partner, GFN Partners Architects, Mr. Luis Chamon, Country Manager, Sangoban, Philippines, Ms. Audrey Bell Poe, Managing Director, World Home Depot Corporation, Mr. Francisco Arellano, Consultant of Maynilad Water Services, Inc., and Mr. Gabriel Maria Angelo Cascante. I would also like to acknowledge the CEO of the PhilGBC, Mr. Christopher De La Cruz, the Executive Director, Ms. Maria Ana Tunggol, and the PhilGBC National Secretariat for organizing this conference. We would like to thank our members and sustaining corporate sponsors that support the program of the PhilGBC and for making our activities possible. Our Diamond Sustaining sponsor, Neo Property Management Inc., our Gold Sustaining sponsor, Wall Vision Corporation, and our Silver Sustaining sponsors, Arthalan Corporation, Daikin Air Conditioning Philippines, Ecotectonica Inc., Firefly Electric and Lighting Corporation, GFN Partners Architects, Gigatech Inc., KPI Elevators Inc., Monofit Construction Philippines, Sangoban Philippines, SMCC Philippines, Surface Repair Solutions, and World Home Depot Corporation. We would like to thank the following sponsors and strategic partners for their support in making this Building Green Conference 2022 possible. Our Diamond Sustaining sponsor and National Secretariat sponsor, Neo Property Management Inc. Our Gold Sustaining sponsor, Wall Vision Corporation. Our BG2022 Gold Strategic Partners, Aboitiz Infra Capital Economic Estates, and City Homes Builder and Development Inc. Our BG2022 Silver Strategic Partners, First Balfour, Daikin Air Conditioning Philippines, Wall Vision Corporation, and our BG 2022 Bronze Strategic Partners, AGC Asia Pacific, Botanica Nature Residences, PhilInvest City, Datem Incorporated, FPD Asia Property Services, Monofit Construction Philippines. Before we continue, please be reminded of the following event guidelines. This webinar will be recorded by the PhilGBC National Secretariat for documentation purposes, and we encourage active participation during the event. You may ask your questions using the question box in the GoToWebinar panel. Questions that you will raise will be addressed during the discussion period. Upon request, an electronic certificate of attendance will be issued by the PhilGBC National Secretariat to your registered email address, provided that you are present for more than 50% of the allotted time for each session, have completed the feedback survey, which will be sent to your registered email address after the event, and requested a copy of your certificate through events@philgbc.org. We continue with our celebration of the World Green Building Week 2022, with this year's theme, Building for Everyone, for the planet, communities, and the economy. This Circularity episode features presentations that are geared towards enabling the building industry stakeholders, integrate and utilize circularity strategies and practices in building projects. For this episode, we'll have Dr. Justino Arboleda, who will be sharing on opportunities for green construction in the Philippines using coconut fiber husk materials. Dr. Justino Arboleda finished his Bachelor of Science and Master of Science in Agricultural Engineering in Tokyo University of Education and completed his PhD at Tsukuba University. He became the Dean of Bicol University College of Agriculture after his studies before he organized Jobuken Enterprises and Cocoa Technologies Corporation, which manufactured coconut fiber products for coconut husk. We also have a presentation from Attorney Dwight Ramos on waste management in the construction industry. Attorney Dwight Ramos is a Senior Vice President of the IPM Group of Companies, a leading entrepreneurial group of companies engaged in construction, real estate, and waste management. He started his career in 1990 with Tax Division of SGV and Company and became in-house legal and business development head, forming part of the senior management team of leading companies in the country. At the publicly listed IPM Holdings Inc., their group made it to Asia CEO Awards, Circle of Excellence, for the 2019 Executive Leadership Team of the Year. He also served as president of the Institute of Management Consultants of the Philippines in 2010 and 2011. Attorney Dwight was governor of the Rotary International District 3780 in 2016 to 2017 and served as the district trainer in 2019 to 2020 and was a director of the Philippine College of Rotary Governors. He is a member of the Rotary Club of Quezon City since 2004 and a faculty of the Rotary Academy and Rotary Leadership Institute. Also, he is a Paul Harris Vocational Excellence Awardee in 2013. He taught at the UST Faculty of Civil Law and De La Salle College of St. Denis and wrote the book Business Licensing and Registration. He is the president of the Tomasinong Ilocano La Union chapter, past president of the Ateneo Schools Parent Council, and trustee of the UST Law Alumni Foundation. He graduated cum laude from the University of Santo Tomas with a Juris Doctor degree, from Polytechnic University of the Philippines with a degree of Masters in Public Administration, and from St. Louis University in 1986 with a degree of Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. He is an outstanding alumni awardee of the UST Law Alumni Foundation in 2015. We also have a presentation from Mr. Carlo Delantar on circular economy. Mr. Carlo Delantar is the founding partner of Core Capital, which manages the joint GoBee Core Fund, a $10 million microfund which invests in next generation of the Philippines' most promising startups. As the head of circular economy at GoBee Partners, a pan-Asian venture capital firm with $1.2 billion in assets under management, Carlo leads investments in innovative companies that champion sustainability. As industries continue to be disrupted by new technologies as well as sustainability, Carlo focuses on looking for business opportunities at the intersection of these two trends and supporting the entrepreneurs who will realize them. Previously, as a social entrepreneur, Carlos worked as the country director of Waves for Water Philippines, or W4W, a nonprofit providing access to clean water, impacted 1 million Filipinos. Carlo was recognized with the Development Award and the Bayanihan Award from the President of the Philippines, as well as a top 30 under 30 innovator by numerous publications, including Forbes. Carlo is currently a circular economy pioneer at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and was a co-chair of the Global Shapers Climate Action Steering Committee at the World Economic Forum. Finally, we have Dr. Marlon Ira, who will be presenting on circular economy for plastics, a community-based approach. Dr. Marlon de Luna Ira is an associate professor and a chairperson of the Department of Sociology Behavioral Sciences, De La Salle University, Manila. He has a Master of Science degree in Human Settlements Development from Asian Institute of Technology, Thailand, and a PhD on Development Studies at De La Salle University. Both his master's thesis and doctoral dissertation are on solid waste management. Dr. Ira has extensive teaching and professional experiences in disaster resilience, solid waste management, service learning, gender and local governance. Dr. Ira has served as a consultant on solid waste management in several national government agencies, local government units, RCC 80 of the AIT, UNIDO and the UNEP, or now UN Environment, on global solid waste management initiatives of the government and private sector. The LSU Sustainability Office on its SWM program, Pasig River Rehabilitation Program, as well as the Toyota Auto Parts. At present, he is the president of the Solid Waste Management Association of the Philippines, or SWAP, and Dr. Ira is also the Social and Behavioral Change Communication Specialist in the Metro Manila 25-year Solid Waste Management Master Plan project with the support from the World Bank. He is currently doing a number of research projects on solid waste management and circular economy. We will be opening the floor for questions after all the presentations from our four speakers, and you may send your questions for our speakers using the question box and will be addressed during the open forum. Following the discussion, Mr. Luis Chamon, member of the Board of Trustees of the PHILGBC, will be delivering the episode's closing remarks. And for our first presentation, let us welcome Dr. Justino Arboleda, President of the Cocoa Technologies Corporation and Jobucan Enterprise, presenting on the opportunities for green construction using coconut husk materials in the Philippines. Dr. Arboleda.
My presentation uh, is focused on the use of coconut husk materials, which is just uh, how they change, which is just waste in the country today. It's the biggest farm waste in the country today. How do I change the slides? Hello.
Will be hello, sir. You could just
Excuse
advise
me.
us,
How
sir,
do I change the
on when
slides?
to move the slides.
We just
Just tell us, sir, when. Give us a on when to move the slides, sir.
hello.
Yes, sir. Kindly give us a cue, sir, Dr. Arboleda, on when to move
Okay.
the slide.
So these are just the waste in the Philippines. They are just being burned. Around ah, 3 billion kilos or 12 billion pieces are being burned every day, every year. Next slide, please. Uh, our research at Bicol University, we uh, on our research in Bicol University, we found out that the coconut farmers are form the biggest poverty group in the Philippines. 65% of them fall below the poverty line, and we thought of starting a business or an enterprise that would help them. Next slide, please. Uh, the coconut fiber has very unique characteristic. It is very hard. It contains around 52% lignin. It's resin. It's like plastic. It doesn't decay very easily. Next slide, please. If you look at each fiber of coconut fiber, it has a lot of void or holes. It holds a lot of water and absorbs a lot of smell. And 1 gram of coconut fiber has a surface area of around uh, 30 square meters. 1 gram, 30 square meters. Next slide, please. So it can be transformed to so many other materials. Uh, it can be made into different materials, and some of them are for construction. Next slide, please. So what we did is to make them into twines using rural folks. It became a livelihood for many people. In our operating area alone, we are working with around more than 1,000 families making the twines. Uh, they are now very fast in making twines. They can make around 150 lengths every day, and they are being paid per piece. Uh, they earn more from making twines than from farming. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. How can I change? Then they are woven into nets by families also. Next slide, please. And we use them for erosion control. Uh, what is good about these coconut fiber nets is that once it rains, the twines absorb all the rainfall, and the water flows on the twine, along the twine, not on the nets. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Uh, the water flows on the twine, not on the ground. So there's zero erosion in this surface. This is T-Plex when it was being built. Uh, for Silex, for Subic Clark Road, we use 1.2 million square meters. For T-Plex is 1.4 million square meters, and for Silex is 450,000 square meters. They're all being made by households. Then we spray grass seeds. Once the grass is established, uh, the slope become very stable. The grass is established in less than 3 months. And once the grass is established and the roots is established also, uh, the surface becomes more durable than concrete. Uh, the nets would not decay, would not even start to decay for 2 years. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. This material has been adopted by the Department of Public Works and Highways by the government in all government construction. But it took the government 15 years before they adopted this. I was asked to train all the government engineers in how to use these nets in government construction. Next slide, please. Next slide po. So it can be seen in all types of projects where uh, soil erosion is a problem. This is in the construction of different slopes built by Bell Corporation in Tagaytay Highlands. As you can see, the soil in Tagaytay Highlands erodes very easily, and concrete structures cannot contain them because once pressure is built at the back of the concrete, the soil expands and the concrete collapses. In this system, the water from inside is allowed to drain outside without erosion. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So even if the slope is very steep, this is in the Lignonil near the airport of Legazpi City, where they built on a hill road, and they have to cut the slopes. For as long as the slope is stable from sliding, the coconuts and grass can prevent surface erosion. If you go to the Legazpi City, it is all covered by trees and grass already. Next slide, please. As you can see, even very steep slopes, as long as it will not slide, we can prevent surface erosion. Next slide, please. This is in Laurel, Batangas. One of its uses is soil erosion prevention along riverbank. Next slide, please. Next slide. This is in Bicol River. In this river, before it was, they created a shortcut from Naga City to the sea because the river was meandering. And originally, this was only 20 meters wide. Because of erosion, it became 100 meters wide. No amount of riprap or concrete construction could prevent the erosion or the widening of this river. The United Nations Development Program asked us to do something about erosion because it killed the coral reef in the ocean because of soil erosion. So we just use nets and water grass, and we are able to prevent erosion. This in Gainsa, Camarines Sur. Next slide, please. This is a project to the Gina Lopez on Estero de Paco. The squatter were removed and the garbage was removed. Instead of concreting the riverbanks, we placed coconut fiber and plants to be able also to clean the water. Next slide, please. This how it become after 1 year. And as you can see in the distance, there are children swimming on a very dirty estero before. Next slide, please. This is the same river estero. This is near the Paco market. Next slide, please. This is afterwards. The water became clean and people became hesitant to throw garbage in the river already. Next slide, please. We would like also to inform you that our company, uh, developed a technology and got a patent for it to produce particle boards coming from coconut husk. So it is chipped first, dried, and next slide, please. And put binder and pressed into boards. Next slide, please. The boards, this was a project between our company, Bicol University and Bern University of Switzerland. And when we measure the characteristics or the characteristic of the board, it passed. It almost passed the European EU standard, but it passed very well the Japan international standards and also passed the Philippine standards for particle boards. Next slide, please. What is good about coconut husk particle boards is that it is termite proof. The termites could not digest the lignin coming from lignin. So as you can see, the after 4 months exposed to white ants, only 3.3% weight was removed or was eaten by termites. But if you use marine plywood, 96% of 96.7% of the marine plywood was eaten by termites. For for walls, the coconut board, only 2.3% were eaten by termites, while marine plywood, 97.3%. It is almost all eaten by termites. Next slide, please. Boards, cocoa boards also is not attacked by fungi, so it is mold proof. Next slide, please. After we made this technology, we published it in the European magazine, and because of that, we were given a citation by the habitat at the National Housing at the International Asia Pacific Housing Forum held in Hong Kong. They say that this will be a game changer in the construction industry because first, it comes from waste. The second is it's termite proof. It also mold proof. It has insulation properties because of the little holes in the coconut fiber, and it does not burn easily. Above all, we can sell it at 20% lower than all the comparable boards in the Philippines. It's not yet commercially available. We are just building the factory, and hopefully it will be available next year. It's cheap. It has insulation properties, and it's termite proof. Next slide, please. These are the boards we have made. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. It was used in Tacloban during the when we built used in housing facilities for the evacuees. Next slide, please. Oh, by the way, the coconut fiber can also be used for caustic boards. It does absorb a lot of sound. Once you use it in your room, you will not feel any echo coming from the sounds. It's mostly used for meeting rooms and chapels or churches. Next slide, please. This one is being used for a chapel. Next slide, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Arboleda. For questions on Dr. Arboleda's presentation, please key in your questions in the question box and we'll address them later in the open forum. So next, for our next presentation, we will have a presentation from Attorney Dwight Ramos, Senior Vice President of IPM Construction and Development Corporation, and his presentation is on waste management in construction industry. Attorney Ramos.
Hi, yes, good afternoon. And thank you for this opportunity. Yes, and I'm from a company called IPM Best, which I will explain later. That's why my sharing will try to look at some of the best practices and strategies on resource efficiency and management that enable circularity, especially in dealing with construction waste. Next slide, please. And talking about construction, we're actually looking at residential construction. When we do houses, multi-unit apartments or townhouses. We also have the non-residential. We look at commercial, industrial, and institutional buildings. And the third one is engineering, in which we look at heavy industries when we do infrastructure, roads, and bridges. Next slide, please. When talking about best practices and strategies in handling waste that the construction industry produces, we actually focus on probably about 4 things. First is the management, or what we know as corporate environmental management. We look also at resource efficiency and making sure that there's efficient use of resources. Of course, now we're talking about circularity and the use of innovation and technology as a best practice and as a strategy to help us deal with our waste coming from the construction industry. Next slide, please. And basically, when we talk of construction waste, we have these common types, which I'm sure some of you are very familiar with. The concrete, the bricks, tiles, cement, and ceramics, or also the wood, glass, and plastic, insulation and asbestos materials, metallic waste, like the pipes, soil, stones, and dredging, paints and varnishes and others. But for our purposes today, we're really looking at the residential and non-residential waste, or those coming from us building houses, multi-unit apartments, townhouses, commercial, industrial, and institutional buildings. Next slide, please. Now, basically, the common types of construction waste can be categorized into the following, no? MSW, or what we know as the municipal solid waste, or the ordinary waste that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, coming from the homes, coming from the offices, coming from the activities that we do. Then we have the scrap or demolition, which happens when we do these activities of renovating, most especially. And then the special waste or the hazardous waste, and probably other types of waste, which we will take a look at later. Okay, so next slide. So what do we do at IPM Best? We actually provide waste management services, and I believe we are working with some of you, or most of you who are attending this conference. And we do hauling services, and we also get the materials out, divert them out of the landfills. And so we have the refuse-derived fuel plant at Pasig, in which we take all the plastics and other burnables and bring them to the cement co-processing plant. We also do some vermicomposting and some composting activities in our landfill in order to prevent them from being thrown in the landfill itself. Now, our recyclables, we of course recover them and divert them and bring them to the recycling plants. And finally, we do landfilling, or the final disposal of the waste. Next slide, please. In all of this, or in handling waste, I do believe that we have the 5 R's that we can take a look at. First R is rejection. Second is reduction. Third is reuse. Fourth, recycling. And fifth is resource recovery. So this sustainable waste management practices really means, in rejection, is avoiding the waste itself. And I think this goes very much in the planning, and it is where the green building principles really come in. Now, in which we avoid the waste by choosing the materials and doing some practices which will reduce whatever waste we will be producing in the future. And also, number 2 is reduction. We also reduce the waste by proper segregation, and this is mandated by Republic Act 9003. And by separating them, we actually preserve them for further reuse or recycling. Okay, and the reuse means that we are repurposing whatever materials that we have for other uses instead of disposing them. And of course, recycling is done at the end level. And when we divert the waste, we are actually putting them or making them into another product. And finally, resource recovery is that after they have been landfilled or disposed of, there are still opportunities to recover them as a resource, like methane for electric production, or getting more burnables and turning them into refuse-derived fuel. And so, next slide. At the end of the day, when we talk of handling the waste, it's still the inverted pyramid that we know of. In dealing with ordinary waste, when it comes to the construction waste, the same principle of the inverted pyramid, or the complete waste management solution, still really applies. And in this inverted pyramid, the basic need for each and every one is, of course, really prevention or reducing the total waste that is created, and preparing the waste for reuse or doing proper segregation. And these two is what you call the waste avoidance. And finally, recycling, turning them into new products, and other recovery from waste like the refuse-derived fuel. And then finally, a very small portion, hopefully and probably just the residuals, will be disposed at the landfills. Next slide. And so in all of this, we have the opportunities for 5 Rs, or what we are saying is that in every stage in the waste management cycle, there are opportunities to do the 5 Rs, in which from the moment of generation, when we produce the waste, up to the moment of segregating them in order to preserve them for further use or reuse. There is the materials recovery, in which we recover those that can be recycled or can still be used. And then in terms of collecting and holding them, and in finally disposing them, there's always that opportunity to reject, reduce, reuse, recycle, or recover some resource out of the waste. Next slide. And so in talking about our waste that we produce, and like the way we work with our clients, we actually propose on a practical sense the things that we can do. And that is still, there is segregated collection, there's segregation at source, there's segregated collection between the wet waste and the dry waste so that we do not mix them and they contaminate each other, and bring the wet waste to composting facilities, bring the dry waste and the burnables to a refuse-derived fuel, and finally to the cement kiln co-processing. And then for those that can still be recycled, of course, or upcycled, we bring them to the recycling plants. And all of this, of course, should all be documented. And finally, when we recover resources from the waste, they can also be soil conditioners or fertilizers that we can further use. Next slide. And so we can do basically a trans-hub system, which we have introduced to our clients, in which in providing collection and disposal services, we put logistics and expertise and network capabilities into work in order to provide a total waste solution. And here, segregation at source is highly encouraged as mandated by Republic Act 9003, which is the first step, and which also brings us the trash to cash back program, which I will discuss later. So all waste, such as the biodegradable, non-biodegradable, and household hazardous and recyclable items found in the garbage are hauled out immediately. So coming from the concept of the materials recovery facilities or MRFs, this one will propose that of the Trans Hub, we just have to segregate at source and take them out separately. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yes, and then the waste collected is brought to a Trans Hub for documentation, proper documentation, treatment, handling, and disposal. So the upcycling ready materials are brought to partner upcyclers, the recyclables to partner recyclers or NGOs, residual plastics and similar materials as RDF to partner cement companies, food waste and other compostables to the composting facility, and only the residual waste will remain, or at least 5% under the law, will go to the engineered sanitary landfill. Next slide. And so talking about this, we are really talking about, again, the inverted pyramid. And in the inverted pyramid, we really look at basically preventing the waste or reducing the waste that we produce, and then properly segregating them, which means that we prepare them for reuse or recycling, and then finally bringing them to the recycling plants. And then if we do other recovery, like the RDF or waste to energy, then we can still do that before finally just disposing a small portion of the residual waste to the disposal sites. And with this, the benefits that we have is that we actually comply with the SDGs under the Millennium Development. And so, next slide. Finally, in employing technologies, we do have the best circular economy that we have in our system, and which is the best trash to cashback program. Here, we advocate for segregation at source, which means that really not mixing the waste, especially if you have MSW out of your operations or out of the waste that you produced. The waste are segregated at source with the recyclables separated in garbage bags and according to waste type. Then we do provide an exchange and redemption service, which means that in exchanging, you can bring or we can get the recyclable waste and other waste that can still be reused. And then we exchange them for points in the redemption, and the environmental points that we give you can be used to redeem products and services from our partner outlets, no? Grocery Essentials. We also have our Trash to Cashback Mart. We are partnered with Meralco so that you can use it in paying your utilities, and also in partnering with beneficiary communities in which you can donate or you can redeem products that you can donate to the beneficiary communities. And of course, at the end of the day, and this is where we come in with the logistics and the network that we do collect it properly, separately, and then bring them to the recycling or upcycling plant. So in terms of circularity, we help our clients and those who are interested to join the Trash to Cashback program be able to segregate, exchange, and redeem environmental points in order to make sure that waste is properly collected, and those that can be recycled or recovered are recovered and recycled. And the best thing about this is we have employed technology, and which means that we have digitized the whole program, and which means that we can give you a real-time report of your activities in terms of coming up with a circularity of your waste. Now, the waste that you produce, we can tell you exactly how much you have produced, how much you have segregated, where it went, and what happened to the waste that you produced. And then we can give you a certificate and give you an assurance that these were properly recycled, properly collected, or it went back to the circular economy. And so with that, thank you once again for listening, and thank you. And later I can entertain some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Ramos. So for our next presenter, we will have Mr. Carlo Delantar, Head of Circular Economy at Gobi Partners, to share his insights and expertise on circular economy. Mr. Delantar.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. Okay, shall we start? Thank you everyone for making it. My name is Carlo Delantar. Today I'll be talking more of the basics of the circular economy, how all of us can actually be part of it, where we are now in the Philippines, and also provide you proper use cases or examples that are already happening in the Philippines now. So next slide. So Circulaw is actually an advocacy platform that was built off through the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and British Council. So our main goal is to just help Filipino organizations transition to a circular economy. We do this in multiple ways, but as we know, time is of the essence, and our goal for now is to really raise awareness on circularity and how we make sure we're actually talking about circular economy and not just another buzzword. Next slide. So what is circular economy? Really, it's a framework now. And I'll talk more about why it's way different from what we know already. But if you think about the world before, generations, our ancestors, we already lived in a circular world, meaning we only hunted what we wanted to eat. If we needed to move, we travel, and we graze what we needed, and the world, or at least Mother Earth, can actually recover. However, globally, right now, Mother Earth is actually having a hard time keeping up with all the amount of extraction and production that the global economy or even just consumers need at any given time. It's coupled by, of course, demand, but also lack of proper forecasting and supply chain integration. So circular economy is really a systemic approach, no? And we have to look at it on a systemic level. Every aspect, every step of your supply chain contributes to a circular economy, even until now. Next slide. So on your left, you can see here the linear economy. So that's where we are currently. So we take, make, and dispose if you are a producer. And of course, if you're a consumer, you purchase, you use, and then dispose. However, in the simplest terms, for a circular economy to happen, we need to rethink how we produce, how we provide services, how we consume, and we want to bend that metaphorical and line all the way to becoming a circle. And I know it's a bit forced on, but it really gives an idea that it is possible to bend that line towards a circular aspect. And really, circular economy is, to say it fastest, would be restorative and both regenerative. Next slide. So we'll talk about circular economy 101, and these are things that we need to remember, especially when it comes to principles. Next slide. So at the end of the day, circular economy starts from the designing, So anything that we do, there needs to be intention before we even start using resources. When you start writing or even just thinking about, what type of blueprint or design you would like, whether that's software, hardware, brick and mortar, we need to think about how our design will affect so many things moving forward, right? So there's some karmic reaction there, but also as part of this industry, it's important to remember that we are also we have an extended producer's responsibility. That's why EPR is fairly connected to circular economy. Next slide. So if there was any slide you want to take note of, this is it. There are 3 circular economy principles. The first one is designing out waste and pollution. The second part is keeping products and materials in use. That's more of the utilization. And of course, regenerate natural systems. This is where decarbonization, carbon sequestration, offsetting really comes in, but also just to help Mother Nature actually keep up with the amount of stuff that we create for the world. Now, it's hard to change the world where we are right now, but we can adapt the circular economy to the modern world in order to actually adjust and make sure we can thrive in this world now. So what does this mean? The goal for your organizations and even our consumers is to think about how can we achieve all 3 principles over time. Maybe right now, all of you can identify your first principle. You can choose which one is already low hanging. You can start with designing out waste and pollution. And then over time, you go for regenerating natural systems, and then hopefully you hit 3. But in order for any organization, even just a consumer, to reach all 3 principles, it's important to remember that we need to work with stakeholders outside of our value chain, of our supply chain, in order to fully hit circularity. And that's really the goal. That's one of our goals for us, but also for everyone here. Next slide. So just just to iterate what each aspect means, but basically designing out waste pollution, how do we actually make sure what we create doesn't create more waste over time? Keeping products and materials in use is fairly focused on like subscription and full utilization. The amount of things that we create right now is usually just fast consumerism, right? Because we know that we can actually just purchase, but we should also be mindful about our purchases. We should be mindful about the utilization and the lifespan or life cycle that we're actually putting into the world. Of course, regenerating natural systems, again, at the end of the day, we're extracting finite resources, emphasis on finite, and this is something very, very important. Next slide. So right now in the Philippines, we've done some studies already, and these are currently the 4 industries that have the highest concentration to transition to a circular economy already, because the industries are number one, are being scrutinized of questionable practices, but also it's pretty much organized as well. And definitely for PHILGBC and the attendees here, a lot of this actually pertain towards this industry as well. Next slide. So talking about PHILGBC, I'd like to talk about one of your members, Nature's Legacy. Next slide. And basically, a good example of what a circular product would look like is how this company focused on becoming manufacturer, but really capitalizing on locally sourced material innovations to tackle the issues of their industry using new material innovations. Next slide. So they have multiple materials, and of course, full disclosure, I'm affiliated with them, but I'm not taking an active role. But to see that this company is both, a PhilGBC member, in terms of being the 1 out of 2 big benefit corporations in the Philippines, and also a cradle to cradle certified company, it speaks volumes of hopefully everyone can be inspired to actually take that route now. So material innovation is the product, rather than saying they're a outdoor furnishing company. Next slide. And I think the most important ones here would be Nature's Gas and UCAS, really looking at how can we design out waste and pollution, and of course regenerating natural systems, which are the 2 principles that this company is already tackling. Next slide. So I think I don't have to speak more about this, but you can definitely reach out to Nature's Legacy about how there's a lot of documentations about this already, but hopefully a lot of the industry here, stakeholders, can actually look into. I'm sure most of the stakeholders here are already going towards that circularity, but definitely one of the most advanced ones in the Philippines would be Nature's Legacy. Next slide. And UCAS is the one focused on paper waste, really looping it back to creating new types of products now. And I think this is very important. So material innovation here is really focusing on how can you design with something more malleable and more flexible as a material based on the needs. And even if you throw it, there's actually a better responsible way of disposing of it, because the material is fairly compostable and recyclable. Next slide. So I'm almost done, but where are we right now? So we actually created a data-driven report on where the circular economy initiatives have been in the Philippines. And I think this is something that hopefully everyone can read on. We have the most extensive information yet so far here, and we hope we can partner up with any organizations here that want to contribute to the cause, and also really looking into creating that action at the end of the day. Next slide. So what are the findings? You can see here from 2019, when we started here, there were only 24 initiatives that we could find. And over time from last year, I'm sure there's more than 300 already. It's just that we can see the amount of increase based on the strategies on your left, whether that's from design, product life extension, waste as a resource, and whatever. Next slide. And you can see here that 25.6% covers buildings, infrastructure, mobility, logistics, energy, water, and waste management related institutions. So this is very interesting, because the city sector, especially for your industry, you contribute a lot for circularity now, and we hope to do more of that all together. As we can see that now that we know about the principles, it's a bit easier to find. And we have all the data to figure out who you want to procure from end to end, whether that's like just the raw materials to processing, manpower, all the way to end of life. Next slide. So I'd like to end my presentation with a video, but we've been working, I've done some work extensively with a lot of organizations, whether that's from the World Economic Forum, all the way to the UN. And I'm very proud to have been working to see that the Philippine government is really looking into circularity, and the fact that the circular economy principles is becoming the guiding standard and framework for anything circularity. And that's how we avoid greenwashing and also help everyone streamline their work now. So bakong is a perennial plant. It's a plant in Cagayan province, and we found that this has a lot of potential to be made in. It could be produced, innovated, and sold within the industry of the Philippines. And we've done some work. Next slide, to really showcase how do we do this. So we wanted to figure out what the supply chain would look like, and really focused on design thinking and design challenges. One of the winners actually for the Circular Design Challenge is Bracom, currently the national winner of the Dyson award, no? And I think that's going to be they're receiving their award real soon, but you can see it online. It's amazing how intentional design with the circular economy principles can really hit any type of design problems we're tackling globally, but also locally. Next slide. So yeah, I hope you enjoy. For this one, we wanted you guys to just listen in to see and believe how, from the start, really focusing on the principles, how we connect it, and how all of us together can fully realize a circular economy. And I'm proud to say Bakong as a circular project is one of the leading use cases globally, mainly because of the strength and passion of Filipinos being circular. So yeah, let's play the slide. Let's play the video, and that ends my presentations. Enjoy the viewing. Thank you.
Nung unang panahon niyan, ma'am, hindi pinapansin yan.
Abala siya sa mga tao nandito kasi parang gabi siya kung tumubo.
Ay parang damo lang po na baliwala sa amin. Kapag namimingwit o kaya nangingisda po kami sa lake, pinuputol lang po namin yan kasi wala kaming alam kung saan po pwedeng gawin yung bakong.
We needed to look into bakong a little deeper and create its space. When Design Center was created, it was thought competitiveness of Philippine products will come from not just designers, but materials that are unique to the Philippines and therefore have a distinctive quality.
That's the beauty of circular economy, where we actually zoom in on users' needs, but also zoom out on a systemic view from sourcing of the perennial plant all the way to end of life. Even at end of life, we were already imagining what could happen to it. Can we loop back the products and actually be reutilized for something else? Is there a way to keep it away from landfill, keep it away from being incinerated or just buried to the ground? The beauty of this is we have this boiling pot of what circular economy could be.
Nakaka-excite to see a different kind of material this time that we can use.
The multi-transformational or configurational nature of what we have been doing is something that can be totally applied to Bakong.
We knew that it has potential to support our current communities with their craft, but also a new community.
When designing the pieces for Bakong, we really thought about how many uses can it have, and is it unusual yet classic enough to go throughout the years.
Upon hearing that this is a natural and sustainable material, this is within the scope of what I've been wanting to look for. A lot more reason why we really agreed to be part of this.
If you don't do it on the right material combination, hindi mo mapapaangat yung value. That's why I tried to integrate wood as a secondary material to put more added value sa bakong.
We're not afraid to try anything. We want to pursue to the max what the material can do, what are its limitations and what are its strengths. And from there, we come out with a lot of different things.
With this one, we are working only on the fiber itself. We had to think of ways to make it look exciting, color it, put it on a certain surface also, material that we can bend it, fold it, instead of just normal weaving. I didn't want to do so much processing in the materials. I wanted the material to really come out and you can feel it, know that it's bakong.
Paano kami magbe-bring ng something new or edge na hindi pa nahanap with other materials?
Can it be done by the community with minimal tools? Kasi ultimately, this is something that they will do.
As a designer naman, what comes from me is how to challenge it. Can we do this? Okay, we've been doing this, but how about if we approach it this way, I had to work with what's available using existing modes.
I tried to hit all the dimensions of sustainability. Aside from using upcycled materials, I wanted to use less of it in general. So I wanted to keep my design simple.
Basically, it's a flat pack furniture. The chair, at the same time, it's a table.
Modo Bako creates a dynamic furniture for a child to understand that you can come up with ideas that progressively make sense.
What we want for that space to be is a sort of catalyst for other spaces to be inspired, to engage the community in the design.
For circularity to happen, it needs a lot of collaborators because it needs to scale. What was important for Design Center is to bring in partners also that have industrialization as its strength.
When the DCP introduced that to me, I was very excited to partner with them because I believe that our system together with the Bakong can be a fruitful partnership.
The big idea is to see if we can use it as a filler doon sa mga plastic product.
Bakong is an example of an agricultural product that can really work hard for so many industries.
Value creation rather than value addition would really benefit marginalized communities.
Para kami ring nakahukay ng isang ginto na wala sa ibang lugar, kami lang ang meron. Hindi seasonal ito. Anytime, pwede kaming magbenta.
Hindi ko rin na-expect na ganun ang kalalabasan ng bakong. Kung nagwe-weave na ako, nagka-interest pa ako na meron pa palang ibang magagawa yung production ng bakong.
Well, namamangha kami kung bakit nagagawang tela, ganun. Dyan lang tumutubo yun.
Well, dapat mag-take off siya on a commercial level. Mabubuhay ang community. Nadidevelop yung material in a better quality, better quantity. So, ang community nadidevelop din.
It's only the beginning. We have to keep going. We have to find other applications for bakong. And we need to develop more and more businesses around the technology of bakong and using bakong for many, many applications.
From here, obviously, you want to make it scalable. You want to make it commercially viable. You want to be able to bring it to the market because it represents so much work of so many people.
It's gonna open a lot of opportunities for the makers. It's a new material that they can explore.
Like, we're not alone in this journey, and something that matters to us matters to other people too. Yeah.
What we need for bakong to really fully realize its potential is people with open minds. We actually need people who would start the conversation, people who would give bakong a chance.
Hopefully, sa future, di na siya alternative. Maging mainstream na rin siya, no?
We're in this for the long haul. We want to do it consistently.
You don't just sustain your company, but you sustain the lives of the people around you. Sobrang they put their hope on you. So you have to go back and show them that something good will come out.
Binabalak kong umalis noon, pero nung nandyan pa rin ang design center, pumasok po sa isip ko, yung tumutulong nga sa amin hindi bumibitaw. Bakit kaming tinutulungan bibitaw?
We know that the ambition of bakong is much bigger. We know that it's not gonna happen overnight. Government has the responsibility to de-risk it for industries, to invest, to lessen that gap, and to make it more viable route to take. This is really just the start of the journey.
Bakong is natural plant from the Philippines. It is our national interest to protect it, and we must think strategically.
It would be wonderful to be able to showcase it as a uniquely Filipino fiber in all its different forms and all its versatility.
There is no choice but to really go the route of circularity and sustainability. We should all be convinced that it's a responsibility that we have to embrace.
The beauty of this project is we're visualizing, we're also showcasing that we can create these products already. We're not talking about concepts anymore, we're talking about the real deal. Designers are really the start of where circularity can be. We hope that this project inspires more designers to adopt circularity.
Kailangan natin proteksyonan, kailangan nating magkaisa para mas lalong mapakinabangan yung bakong.
Thank you, Mr. Carlo Delantar. And for our last presenter for this afternoon, this will be from Dr. Marlon Ira. He's an associate professor and chairperson of the Department of Sociology and Behavioral Sciences, De La Salle University, to present on circularity for plastics, a community-based approach.
Thank you.
Dr. Ira.
Yes, thank you. Rowena, can you hear me well? Thank you, PHILGBC, for inviting me to this Building Green 2022. Being the last presenter for this episode, I hope you still have the desire and the energy to listen. And I will be focusing on equally important resource. And I'm happy that the previous speaker introduced circular economy, and one of the pillars of that is plastic. So next slide, please. I intend to give my presentation a brief introduction, definition of some terms, some findings on plastic, what is community-based approach, and then partnerships and accountability, and conclusions and recommendations. Next slide. One of the resource materials that have significant use is plastics. Many local government units put forward ordinance regulating or even banning the use of plastics. Some groups are claiming that plastics are reusable and therefore better than paper. While the debate continues, let me offer a way to look at circularity of plastics with an attempt of using community-based approach. I would like to engage in this conversation about circularity of plastics. As the current president of the Solid Waste Management Association of the Philippines, I would like to dwell on this issue. First, this is very timely because of the recent amendment of Republic Act 9003, which is SB 2425 and HB 10696, an act institutionalizing the extended producer's responsibility on plastic packaging waste. Next slide, please. Plastics are versatile materials, but the way we use them is incredibly wasteful. We take oil and gas from the earth to make plastic products that are often designed to be used only once, and then we throw them away. This is what we call a linear take, make, waste model. Every year, millions of tons of plastics worth billions of dollars end up in landfills or burned or leaked into the environment. In 2016, MacArthur Foundation published a report showing that most plastic packaging is used only once, and only 40% is collected for recycling. 95% of the value of plastic packaging materials worth 80 to 120 billion US dollars annually is lost to the economy. In their 2017 report on plastics, they showed that without fundamental redesign and innovation, about 30% of plastic packaging will never be reused or recycled. Next slide, please. Next slide. So I think we had our Circular Economy 101, but sorry, please go back to that slide. The circular economy is an economic system in which materials are designed to be used, not used up. Products and the system should be designed to ensure no material loss, no toxins are leaked, and the maximum use is achieved from every process, material, and component. So there are a lot of definitions and concepts like loop closing, eco-design, industrial ecology, industrial symbiosis, life cycle analysis, and performance economy have contributed to the concept of circular economy. So we can drive the optimization of resources, reduce the consumption of raw materials, and recover waste by recycling or giving it a second life as a new product. Next slide, please. By 2040, we need to rethink about our relationship with plastic. No? If applied correctly, the circular economy benefits society, the environment, and the economy. By 2040, a circular economy has the potential to reduce an annual volume by 80% of plastics entering our oceans and 25% reduction of greenhouse gas worth 200 billion US dollar savings per year, or 700,000 net additional jobs. What are the vision of circular economy for plastics? Next slide, please. So there are 6 visions. We need to eliminate the plastics we don't need. Innovate to ensure that the plastics we do need are reusable, recyclable, or compostable. Circulate all the plastic items we use to keep them in the economy and out of the environment. The vision The vision for circular economy for plastic has 6 key points. Okay, I hope I'm being heard well. Elimination of problematic or unnecessary plastic packaging to redesign, innovation, and new delivery models is a priority. Reuse models are applied where relevant, reducing the need for single-use packaging. Number 3, all plastic packaging is reused, recycled, or composted in practice. Number 4, all plastic packaging is reused, recycled, or composted in practice. Number 5, the use of plastic is fully decoupled from the consumption of finite resources. And number 6, all plastic packaging is free of hazardous chemicals and the health, safety, and rights of all people involved are respected. Okay, so what would constitute a community-based approach? Next slide, please. Community analysis is the process of assessing and defining needs, possible barriers and opportunities, and resources involved in initiating community solid waste management programs or projects. This is called community diagnosis or community needs assessment or community mapping. This could be in the form of partnerships between social and private partnership, an example of which would be academe and industry, church and industry, barangay LGU and industry. The first to do is the conduct of WACS or waste analysis and characterization study as a requirement. This will help update the solid waste management plan, which will determine what kind of waste are generated, how much plastic are generated in the community. There is an updated WACS strategy which was approved by the National Solid Waste Management Commission and being implemented by the Department of Science and Technology. Almost all of our colleagues who are in doing WACS have been trained by the DOST. Solid Waste Management Plan is the main document to know the program, project, and activities on solid waste management depending on the result of WACS. Ideally, the conduct of WACS should be done during dry season and the other will be during the wet season, as the waste generation varies on the season. In terms of capacity building, all the stakeholders whether waste generators, collectors, and implementers, would require developing their capacity to ensure sustainable solid waste management, especially of plastics. Information, education, and communication campaign may no longer be effective means to change the mindset and improve behavior to make them appropriate and sustainable. Hence, it is suggested that SBCC is use or social and behavioral change communication, which is now gaining popularity, especially in the aspect of solid waste management. At present time, this is being used most of the time in health related projects, but it's very effective. It could be very effective when using for changing behavior and mindset of people in terms of managing their waste. So what are some of the recommendations? So for a community-based approach, there's a need to establish a locally based system for plastic waste collection and upcycling, keeping the means of production in the hands of the community. I think the video portrayed this example, no? That the community the community are actively involved in the circular economy. Second one, improve the value chain for upcycled plastic products for profitability and potential for investment. And finally, develop local community as model in the promotion of circular economy. And finally, I would like to pose a question. Is it possible to think the way we design, use, and reuse plastics to create a circular economy for plastics? Perhaps, can we start this in our own communities? So with that, thank you very much for listening.
Hey, thank you very much, Dr. Ira. So now I would like to invite all of our speakers to turn on your cameras and join us for the open forum for this episode. As mentioned earlier, you may send your questions for our speakers using the question box. So for we have here some questions. Actually, we have a lot of questions coming in right now. So let me first throw in the question to Mr. Carlo Delantar. What are the common issues do companies encounter that hinder the transition to a more circular process or products? And what are the actions have you already seen in transforming their processes to provide a more circular product or service?
Great question, and that's the starting point now. So there is right now just awareness. This is definitely another task to put in as part of operations now. Before we would always just do things the normal way. So ngayon, it's really figuring out operators and company actually sustainability in general. No, that's usually the first case, the awareness. An economic opportunity already, about 3.2 trillion US dollars globally. So the real question is, when does it start? No. So one, it's already happening. We're seeing that with RA 9003, especially with the recent EPR law, to be enforced. But and most of the public conglomerates are already asked to focus on ESG frameworks and standards. So it's going to happen. It's a question of when. So the consumers are already demanding it. Now the suppliers and producers are now really scrambling to figure out, are they doing it right or not? And for us, our role is to make sure we protect consumers to know na they're not being greenwashed, because at the end of the day, still money talks and influences. So hopefully that gives an inkling of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Carlo. So for the next question, this is for Attorney Dwight Ramos. Attorney Dwight, what are the roles for the contractors, designers, and project owners to ensure that they effectively manage their construction waste and transform their processes to a more circular process during construction?
Yeah, when we go back to the rules, it's actually the rules of corporate environmental management, which means that the company itself or the stakeholder should be committed to the corporate environmental management. And this means that you have to look at the practice of the NIMBY or not in my backyard, because this attitude of the NIMBY or not in my backyard, once the waste goes out of your facilities, then you don't care anymore where it goes. The new NIMBY that we're talking about under Republic Act 9003 and under the initiatives which you are taking is that the new NIMBY means now in my backyard. Now, and that means that in terms of managing your waste, you should now take a look at making sure that the way you handle your waste is that you take care of it in your own backyard. Basically, it means segregation at source under Republic Act 9003 to make sure that the waste are not contaminated, that they are taken out or collected and hauled separately, so that those that can be recycled goes to recycling, those can be recovered, and compostables can be composted, and only the residual waste or a small portion will go to the landfill itself. And most of it goes back to the circular economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Attorney Dwight. Check. We have a question here for Dr. Arboleda. There are interests for the use of the cocoa board. How can they reach you, and what is the timeline for the production for the cocoa board?
The equipment from China. We'll be importing the equipment from China this year, and hopefully we can start commercial production by the end of next year.
Funds from the Department of Health for next year. This won't be enough to fund the purchase of new generation vaccines that can curb new COVID-19 variants.
For another question here for Mr. Carlo Delantar from Marilim. Have you compared the impact of construction industry to other industries such as fashion, packaging, or furniture in terms of circularity?
Oh, great question. So about 1/3 of all the waste in the world actually comes from the construction industry. So when you say construction industry, it's from the interior, it's from the foundational making, architectural, interior design, industrial design, landscape, everything, right? So yes, it's a large part, but it also has specific industries under it supplying to the larger industry. So definitely, I mean, technically speaking, the space that you are all on, it's really infrastructure now. So within infrastructure, there's a lot to build in. So yes, lots of ways. Having accreditations and having organizations like PHILGBC really helps to really build that accountability, but also commitment moving forward. No, and the numbers and gains are there, right? Sustainability is now a selling point. It's not a marketing point na. It's a selling point. No, so it's going to be an important aspect. But yes, if you want to live in a country in the Philippines that has more than 20 typhoons, you want something that's resilient and circular designed over time. So there is definitely a big opportunity here, and we look forward to be a part of that, especially for our country.
So thank you, Sir Carlo. For our next question, this is for Dr. Marlon Ira. For construction sector, are there studies on the contribution of the sector to plastic wastes, and what actions do you think the sector needs to have better action?
Well, me as a researcher have yet to, maybe Attorney Dwight can can help me on responding to this. But my take is, of course, plastic is not the main, one of the main waste of construction industry. No, but I think significantly, eventually, especially during this pandemic, there's a tremendous increase, no, in the generation of plastic. So my take, or my suggestion is that, of course, it should be as an additional generated waste, no, for domestic waste. So it could be addressed by doing waste segregation. I think that's basic, no, because waste segregation is the key, no, in solid waste management. I think this is it's not, I would say it's not a very much, it's a little bit taken for granted, no. In fact, in the list provided by Attorney Dwight, this is one of the things, no, together with other waste materials. Thank you. I hope I was able to respond to the question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ira. So we have a question here from for Attorney Dwight. You mentioned that you can provide end users with real-time information on where do their waste go. So how do you provide this information to the users? And to follow up that, another question, you mentioned that you provide certification to your clients on the amount of waste they diverted. Is the certification in conformity with the accepted standards? If yes, what standards do you use to certify how much waste your client diverted?
Yes. Well, first of all, the way we can provide the data is because we have developed an app. So this is an example of using technology in order to help in waste management. And the app that we created is the My Basurero app, which can track down the waste, not only the waste itself, but even the collection and disposal. It's like the hailing apps that we have now. So from the time you book a collection for your waste, it's already been tracked. It can be tracked by you. And then when it is collected, how much is collected, and out of what was collected, what are the types of waste that were taken. And then it is brought to our trans hub. That is where the logistics come in, and those that can be recycled are brought to the recyclers. Those that can be composted are brought to composting, and only the remaining residual waste is brought to the landfill. And all of this is tracked, and all of this can be part of a certificate that we can issue because we are a landfill operator and we are the disposal site. So we can actually certify on the proper disposition of the waste that was generated by you and was handled by us.
Okay, so you, Attorney. So next question here, for Attorney Dwight. What does the sector need to have better action in waste and materials management?
Yeah, what is needed is actually the change in behavior, as mentioned by Doc Marlon earlier. You know, we've been in the industry of collecting and disposing the waste, and we've been concentrating on that together with our clients, the local government units and the government. But what he said is what we are into now, that we of late also was able to find out, and that is the behavioral change. And whether we are in the construction industry, any other industry, or even ourselves as waste generators, I think it's very important that we have to rely on the behavioral change, which means that, again, going back, the new NIMBY, taking care of our own waste right in our own backyard, and making sure that when it goes out from our facilities, it goes out from our homes and our offices, they will be handled properly. How? By complying with Republic Act 9003. It's sabi nga ni Marlon kanina, segregation of source is king. Because when you do segregation of source, they do not contaminate each other, and those that can be reused can be reused, and those that can be recycled can be recycled, and only the residual waste now will go to the landfills.
Thank you very much, sir. So we have here a question for Dr. Arboleda. This is from Marie Lim. Are there harmful chemicals used in the production of your coco boards, and can they be disposed of easily with no negative effect to the environment?
Use urea formaldehyde. Almost all cocoa boards here, almost all wood boards here in the Philippines use urea formaldehyde. It has a little toxic element. That's why it is, but it is being tolerated here in the Philippines because the houses here in the Philippines are more open. In Europe, it is prohibited because almost all the buildings and houses that are closed. We can use other glue, but urea formaldehyde is the cheapest. There are also natural glue we can use, which is natural and non-toxic. But it will cost a little bit more.
He deserved to face some punishment. That's my view. Like, that was just in a sense. But what was unjust was what happened during and after that process, where any
Arboleda. So we'd like to ask Carlo, what's the top 2 challenges that your group facing to pivot this project? And how does power, energy sectors can help?
Hard question. I might need 2 hours to expand. I have a presentation for it. But first, really, need awareness. No, everyone's still talking about sustainability. Sustainability is the buzzword until now. However, circularity is the modern term for sustainability. It's really blending in sustainability in the modern world. So I think that's awareness and education is going to be the most important aspect here. We're already working with specific sectors, really figuring out how we transition. No? So we have a project with the World Economic Forum. We're figuring out what the pilot projects would look like, what the outputs would be, and hopefully scale them over time. Now, outside of that, really, our goal is to help organizations. Not each organization has their own supply chain to deal with, and it takes a long time to just go through how to fix it. However, it's way easier now to procure circular products. No? And the world is globalized already. The Philippines is already in its digital haven, so it's there. Now, however, if we want to talk about power and energy, there's a lot of conversations about what that means. The term waste to energy is usually thrown in to the mix. The term itself, waste to energy, usually the first thing people think about is incineration. I do not support that, especially where there's a lot of carbon emissions being made globally. But waste to energy doesn't mean just incineration. There is pyrolysis. There are different ways of doing it. Energy storage is at its highest peak. Lithium ions just too expensive. There's so many ways. We haven't really captured and stored energy at an efficient rate. And of course, solar. Solar, in terms of the efficiency to actually capture energy, has gotten really, really good. Now, in terms of how that would look like for the Philippines, at the end of the day, for incentives to happen, government should step in. So we're hoping for the new secretaries, especially the one in DOST, and of course, ISEC Fred really push through for multi-stakeholder approach towards nation building in this space. So all the ingredients are in the right place. It's probably the question of how hot do you want the stove to go. You don't want it to be too burnt. You want it to be just right. And then even better, if it's not too salty, not too sugary, then you can just add when you need to. So thanks.
Okay. So just to wrap up this open forum, from all of the speakers, would like to ask you this question. We see that the principles of circularity is something that we are already experiencing. So what do you think should be the next step for us to scale up circularity in buildings in the country? So let's first hear from Dr. Arboleda, then next with Attorney Dwight, then next with Dr. Ira, and then from Sir Carlo. Dr. Arboleda.
Yeah, for the erosion control nets, the government has made it a compulsory material for government construction. So it is now being used nationwide and is employing a lot of people. For the cocoa board, it's now being supported by it has been endorsed for funding by the Cocoa Levy Fund, and because using coconut husk helps the poorest of the poor in the country, the government plans to make it also compulsory for because it's actually cheap and good material. They are going to ask the government or the contractors, builders, to use the material as much as possible. If that becomes reality, actually now we are importing something like 800,000 cubic meters of panel boards or wood boards a year. We'll be only producing something like 25,000 cubic meters a year. But if we convert all the coconut husks being just burned in the Philippines, we will be producing almost 3 million cubic meters of boards. We will not only satisfy the needs for the country, we will also be able to export a lot of boards.
Thank you, Dr. Arboleda. Next, from Attorney Dwight.
Really the use of technology in order to help us scale up circularity in the country, just like what we've done in trash to cashback, in using technology to be able to track the right data so that we know the right numbers and we know how much waste we are producing, where they're going, and what's happening to them. And when we have that, then we can have the proper tools for planning, and we will be able to track the way forward, and we will be able to measure our performance. I think what has been happening in the past is that we've all been computing, looking at the ceiling and saying, this is how much waste we produce, this is where it goes, and there's no responsibility because it cannot be tracked. You do not know where it's going, what's happening. But with the use of technology, which I think we have demonstrated by using the apps and making sure that we're able to track this waste, however hard it is, and get real-time data, then now we are able to plan out the waste characterization that Marlon has mentioned. Now we're able to do that right on track and right on tact. Hindi na po, the data that we have is not one that is just taken out of the ceiling, but it is one that is based on real data that is taken from the field. And with that, we're able to do it because of the aid of technology. So I guess for us to move forward and to scale this up, we should have more of that.
Thank you, Attorney Dwight. Let's hear from Dr. Ira.
Yeah, thank you, Wei. I think in order for us to scale up circularity, whether it's in food, in fashion, electronic waste, or plastic, I would rather go back a bit to the basic. No, I think it's very important that because change will start with individual, no, and then eventually influence the family, and then the family will influence the community will influence nation, and then globally. So I think it's very important that when you talk about circularity, always keep in mind the important stakeholders, the inclusivity, and then the collaboration, working together, which are buzzwords that we have been hearing, and I think this should be genuinely implemented. And I remember, I mean, I always remember the life of the astronaut, no? How they live their life in the outer space. No, I don't know how we can apply the principles of the astronaut, no? Because they're able to survive given the complexity of their life up there. So maybe we can be astronauts in our own little way, but of course it will take a lot of change of mindset and behavior, because that's something difficult to do. Thank you very much.
Dr. Ira. So let's hear from Carlo.
Okay, so we can be technical to it, but at the end of the day, we need billions of people really accepting circularity now. That's going to be the most arduous task. Now, how do we simplify it? First of all, philosophically speaking, if we're talking about the stakeholders here, you guys build habitats, no? So whether that's the buildings, malls, houses, whatever. So majority of our time is spent indoors, or at least within buildings. So the next question is, we can use that platform to actually educate now, and also improve small things slowly. The usual things is, fluorescent to LED. The next thing you do is having waste management. Next thing you know, how can you optimize for foot traffic? Those things are happening, right? But we need to talk about it. When we keep talking about it over time by repetition, everybody will follow through, no? And that's how how human dynamics work. The more people do it, by default, without knowing whether it's true or not, sooner or later you'll follow through, no? So let's all be advocates and champions for the principles. Always ask if they're really following the principles. Are they practicing it? Are they marketing it properly? And then also make sure that they're audited, or at least accredited by organizations like PHILGBC or any other organizations. And that's very important. Third-party verification, because without that, then everything comes with biases. So it really starts there. But again, we have our own platforms. We start there and then just build out from there. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you once again to Dr. Arboleda, Attorney Ramos, Mr. Delantar, and Dr. Ira for sharing insights and expertise on circularity. So thank you for participating in the discussion, and if you have further questions for our speakers, please contact the PhilGBC National Secretariat at BG2022@philgbc.org so we can coordinate with our speakers after the event. Thank you to our participants for joining us for episode 8, the Circularity. And tomorrow, episode 9, the Professionals' Health and Wellbeing. The PhilGBC will host the first online training for the PhilGBC Health and Wellbeing for Buildings, version 1.0.0, to help increase the capability of professionals and project proponents in implementing health and well-being strategies in buildings. The training will include a background on health and well-being in buildings and in-depth discussion on the requirements and process for the PhilGBC Health and Well-being for Buildings version 1.0.0. Next week, we will be launching the Verde District's version 1.0.0 in episode 10, the Verde Day. We will also feature pilot projects from Verde Districts. They will be also sharing their experience and insights on how they incorporated their sustainability initiatives in planning, implementing, and managing their district projects. In the afternoon, episode 10, Verde Day, will feature presentations from retail districts, and this episode is exclusive to PhilGBC members. Developers and owners of retail districts developments around the country will share their sustainability initiatives and strategies in managing and operating retail district projects. And later in the afternoon, on Monday next week, the Verde Expertise and Experience Exchange, or Verde X3, is exclusive to certified Verde professionals. This session will serve as the platform for continuous improvement and innovation, and it seeks to pursue greener cities, communities, and buildings through professional development. Please scan the QR codes for each episode to register or contact the PhilGBC National Secretariat through BG2022 at philgbc.org for more information. And to officially close the episode, we have Mr. Luis Chamon, Member, Board of Trustees of the PhilGBC, and Country Manager of Sangoban, Philippines. Mr. Chamon.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah? Okay. So, good afternoon, everybody, and a happy World Green Building Week. I would like to thank to all the participants of the Building Green 2022 conference, episode 8, the Circularity. What great presentations we had. I hope you enjoy as much as I did. And I would like also to thank our speakers for this episode, Dr. Justino Arboleda, founder of Juboken Enterprise and Coco Technologies Corporation, Artoni White Ramos, Senior Vice President of IBM Construction, Mr. Carlo Delantar, founding partner of Core Capital, and Dr. Marlon Era, Associate Professor and Chairperson of the Department of Sociology and Behavioral Science of De La Salle University. We hope you learn from their insights and apply the key ideas presented. I hope also that you are motivated to practice and push for resource efficiency and management. We encourage you to work together with your material suppliers, building professionals and contractors to integrate the principles of circularity in your projects. And finally, I would like to thank you for our BG 2022 sponsors and sustained support. First, the gold strategic partners, Neo, Aboitis, and City Homes Builder and Development. The silver strategic partners, Wall Vision, Daikin, and First Balfour. And the bronze strategic partners, Monocrete, Botanica, Philinvest, FPD Asia, AGC Asia Pacific, and Dayton. Please join us on our upcoming episodes as presented before. And yeah, I hope once more that you had a nice afternoon hearing the episode 8, Circularity. And together, I hope that we will experience circularity and pursue regeneration. Thank you very much for your time and see you on our next chapter. Thank you.